guys, it's Vanessa with Farmgirl Gardens and Market, and today I am trench planting some tomato clones. Now, trench transplanting is a method of transplanting tomatoes where instead of planting them vertically, you're actually planting them horizontal in a trench. The benefit to doing this is because tomatoes will form soil roots from their stem if buried, you get an abundance of root development rather quickly. Now, personally, I only like to use the trench method when transplanting clones. And if you're not familiar with clones, I really encourage you to reach out on your neighborhood garden pages and ask people if they are interested in swapping some of their suckers for yours. And that's a great way to get a huge variety of plant diversity for cheap or for free or just for barter. But the way that you make a clone is basically on an indeterminate tomato where the tomatoes are continually putting out suckers. Suckers are that new growth that sprouts between the main branch or the main stem, the branch, and then in between those is where the sucker develops. If you clip that sucker and put it in water, it will form roots all along that stem, and then you can transplant that. So that process is called cloning. And it's a great way to get a bunch of plants in quick. Now, because I have been pregnant, just had our baby 2 weeks ago, or almost 2 weeks ago, my garden had gotten away from me, including all of my suckers. So this, if you can believe it, was a sucker off one of my heirloom plants. So I was able to clip it, put it in water, and get it to root, which you can see all of these roots developed around here. And now we're going to actually trench transplant it where we're laying it horizontal. These roots are all going to take off. This plant will self-correct because it's going to grow in the direction of the sun. It'll actually bend upwards. And so it's a really great way of getting some larger tomatoes in. Now, a couple of things that I do to help this guy is if you have a couple of dollars to throw at this project, rooting hormone, even though you don't need it, really does help give these roots a boost in growth and development. It's about $8 for a bottle this size at Walmart or Amazon. I'll link it in the show notes, but it'll last you forever and it's a good product. Another thing that I like to do when I'm transplanting anything is add a good handful of worm castings. Again, we produce these on our homestead. I definitely encourage you to get into vermicomposting because regardless of the size of your garden, if you can fit a shoebox somewhere, you can successfully vermicompost. And this is just a great bioavailable nutrient treatment that will never burn your plants because a worm has already metabolized it. And then the next thing that I like to do once I've added some worm castings to my planting hole is just top dress everything with a good fish fertilizer. This is really just because it's chock full of magnesium and calcium and gives your plants a good start when they've been transplanted. Now, one thing that I'm not doing today is I'm not transplanting at the best time. The best time to transplant is not high noon when the sun is directly overhead. This is just how life worked out for me today. The best time to transplant, if it's going to be a cloudy day, is early morning. Get that plant that shade and that time to get those roots established for the whole day. If it's going to be a sunny day, really the best thing to do is to plant it in late afternoon, and that way it has the whole evening to get established. And if you're going to be like me and sheet, what I'm going to do after this, even though it won't be pretty, is I'm going to bring some lawn chairs out and actually just shade them with the lawn chairs. So you can kind of cheat, but those are the best practices. Start from a clone, get really good root development by use of any of these three products, getting them established with good nutrition, and also making sure that you're planting at a time of day where it's not going to stress the plant out. But without further ado, you're going to create your trench. You'll simply do that just by digging out the length of the horizontal section that you are planting. This guy is going to go just like this. All of this stem is going to turn into roots. I'm going to cover him back on top. Let me add my amendments. Back on top with the soil. Now this is a good step that people often forget. You need to force soil contact on these roots because they have not been in contact with the soil. So if you're not pressing them down, those roots aren't making good contact with soil, and by the time they do, the plant will have been too stressed. So go ahead and make sure that you're pressing it down well, and then I cover it back over with mulch so that it helps with keeping the soil consistently moist, especially in Texas. And this mulch does a beautiful job of increasing soil fertility. You can actually see this chard is doing so well out here, even in full sun, because the mulch is helping to keep it temperature controlled. So do pull away a little bit of the mulch off the stem, but then you just water this guy in. I am going to shade him like I mentioned because I'm planting him kind of in the high heat of day, but that is how you trench transplant tomatoes from clones. And again, I do encourage you, meet with your garden neighbors, put a post up on Facebook or Nextdoor, join North Texas Community Gardeners Facebook pages, because if you, especially like many during these days of COVID, cannot get to a store, or your stores aren't even selling plants at this point, this is a fast way to get really good, vigorous plants growing and to get more tomato species than maybe you have available to you. So I hope that helps. I hope that you're well. And until next time, bye y'all.